Hello everyone, good day. Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. I'm Queenie, former international student here in Canada, currently on my postgraduate work permit. We created this channel to share some perspectives into studying and living in Canada as a temporary resident. If you are new to our channel and you like this type of content, please don't forget to like and subscribe for you to be notified of future uploads. Okay, so in today's video, I'll be sharing with you one piece of good news we received this year, which was the approval of my post-graduation work permit, as well as my husband's open work permit extension. We were blessed to be granted another 3 years for us to remain in Canada. Woohoo! We'll also be sharing some insights on how we prepare for our application, the steps we took, and our timeline. Just a disclaimer, I am not an expert, but everything I will provide in this video is based on our own experiences. So let's get started. Let me first begin with our situation before we got our approval. So as the student permit holder, I completed my program in December 2022. I then received my letter of completion from NATE in January 2023, wherein it took about 3 weeks for us to wait. And because I had not yet found a full-time job, I was only working 20 hours per week at the time. It could have boosted our confidence in our application for postgraduate work permit and open work permit extension of my husband if I had full-time employment. But there was no option for me then to become full-time at my current employer where I've worked for 1.6 years. What made our situation even more challenging was our visas and permits were only valid until March 31st of this year, 2023, and with the completion letter released in mid-January, I only have about 2 months before our visa expires for me to find a full-time job and submit our applications, particularly for my husband's open work permit extension, which is contingent on my standing as the primary applicant. My husband's status is highly dependent on my status as the primary applicant. Thus, if I am not approved of my postgraduate work permit application and do not have full-time skilled employment, he will be forced to cease working. And because my husband's job was not skilled, he was not able to apply for the PR pathway, and with our permits expiring in March 2023, we might have to apply for my husband's visitor's visa in order for him to stay legally in Canada after his visa expires and permit expires in March. So it will allow him to stay in Canada but will not be able to work. With our circumstances, we have two options for applying our permits. The first choice was for us to submit or apply for our permits together, and the second was for us to apply independently, which means that I will apply for my postgraduate work permit first, and once approved and is already working full-time, I will submit the application of my husband's open work permit extension. For this option, we were already anticipating that we would need to file for a visiting visa for my husband so he could remain in Canada but not continue with his employment. With our permits, our visa expire in March 2023, and the extended processing times for postgraduate work permit application approval, which is between 3 to 4 months based on Facebook posts I've read, we took the risk of applying for our permits together, so both of us will be in implied status when our permits expire in March 31st, and we can continue work as we wait for the decision of our applications, as not being able to work was not an option for us as we would need to earn to sustain our needs and pay our bills. Now, let me share our timeline. Though I was already anticipating that we will be submitting our applications in January of 2023, we already started gathering most documents we would need in September of 2022. We referred to IMM 55A3E for the list of postgraduate work permit requirements, and we referred to IMM 556E for my husband's open work permit extension. I created a folder specific to our postgraduate work permit and open work permit extension application and created subfolders for each requirement to facilitate easy reference when we will be uploading them in the IRCC portal. Then in December of 2022, I already initiated the draft of our application, like filling out the online form, and the forms for uploading. The IRCC portal will allow you to create a draft of your application, filling in ahead important information, and you can just submit it once you're ready or has completed all required documentations. The reason I did it in advance was to save me time in submitting my application upon receipt of my completion letter, to have my application ready for submission once I have the lacking documents from my designated learning institution. Doing this will allow us the opportunity to go over our application many times, review all information, and ensure accuracy, as we cannot afford any mistake that might cause further delays in the approval of our application, or worse, get rejected due to incorrect information or missing documentation. Then in January of 2023, I finally received my completion letter from NATE, dated January 16, 2023, and given us or sent to us by email in January 20th. I submitted our application on the same day. I received it on a work day, so I didn't come in that day, so I could perform one last review of all information and documentation before submitting our application. In terms of fees, we paid a total of $510 for our application, $255 for my postgraduate work permit application, and $255 for my husband's open work permit extension. And then once we have already submitted our application, especially for international students, you will already be in implied status, so that will allow you to work full-time for 40 hours or more per week. As for my husband, his work permit is still valid until March 30th, but can continuously work full-time up until there is a decision on our application. It took 4 months for our application to be approved, as we were approved on May 8, 2023. We then received our new permits in the mail in less than 2 weeks after that. Now let me quickly share the outcome of our applications. For me, as the international student and completed a 2-year program, I was granted with 3 years postgraduate work permit, which is from May 2023 to May 2026. As for my husband, who is my open work permit holder, he was also granted with 3 years extension, which is also from May 2023 to May 2026. We were also blessed to receive our ETA, or electronic travel authorization, which is valid for 5 years, which is until 2028. For those who are not familiar with ETA, it is an electronic travel authorization. It is an entry requirement for visa-exempt foreign nationals, including the Philippines, traveling to Canada by air. This ETA is electronically linked to your passport, and it is valid for 5 years or until your passport expires, whichever comes first. This will allow you to fly to or transit through a Canadian airport without the need for a travel visa. With a valid ETA, you can travel to Canada as often as you want, and this only costs $7 Canadian dollars to apply. The process is completed online. All you have to do is to complete the form, wherein you will need your passport, a credit card, and your email address, and answer some questions. If you might be curious as to who can apply for this, you would be eligible to apply for ETA if you would meet 3 requirements. One of the criteria being set was you should have held a Canadian visitor visa or temporary resident visa in the past 10 years, or currently hold a valid United States non-immigrant visa. Second is you should be coming to Canada for a short visit, business or tourist activity, normally for stays up to 6 months, and then you're flying or transiting through a Canadian airport using a valid passport from one of the eligible visa required countries. So those would be the different requirements for you to be granted the ETA. So in our case, the first requirement applied to us, wherein we held a Canadian visa for in the past 10 years. So that's when we came in my case, as an international student, and then my husband as an open work permit holder. All right, so moving on, now let me share with you the preparations we did prior to the submission of our applications. First was we did some research on postgraduate work permit and open work permit extension application process online, such as through the IRCC website, Facebook groups, and YouTube. We got a checklist of documents needed for application from the IRCC website, and we also came across various YouTube channels about how to apply for our application. I will include all those links in the description box below for easy reference. Next step we did was to set timelines to ensure that we are on top of what's required from our end and be on track to avoid delays, such as identifying when to start gathering documents, when to request for certain documents, when to start drafting our application, and of course, when we should submit our application. Once we had outlined our timelines, we already started preparing our available documents. Most of these are similar documents we prepared when we initially applied for my student permit and my husband's open work permit. We also started obtaining needed documents from my school and employer when I was done with my program, such as transcript of records from my school and my employment reference letter. While I was still finishing my program, I also started our online application in advance, that is putting in needed information but leaving in draft status until we had all documents ready for submission. While we waited for my completion letter, we also finalized all required paperwork and documentations to verify that we were not lacking anything else besides the completion letter, and we eventually got ourselves ready to submit my postgraduate work permit and my husband's open work permit extension upon receipt of our completion letter. Preparation is really key to ensure that we can avoid further delays in the application submission process, as well as avoid the possibility of getting denied due to incomplete documentation or missing information. Kasi sayang din ang bayad if we need to reapply, lalo na limited edition lang ang pera namin dito. Okay, so now let me share with you the list of documents we prepared and submitted for our application. As always, we wanted to go over rather than under when it comes to documentation to ensure we are able to provide as many references for the visa officer to review and grant us the approval we are seeking for. As for my postgraduate work permit application, here are the documents I have submitted. Some of these were not required based on the postgraduate work permit checklist, but I still include them. First is the letter of intent. This document or letter is not really required, but I decided to include this due to my situation wherein I only had a part-time position, and I felt this would be an opportunity for me to connect with a visa officer to explain my situation and my plans about my career in Canada, as well as my intent to include my husband in my application. Next was I submitted a copy of my existing study permit. I also provided my completion letter, my transcript of records. I also included my employment reference letter. This is for verification of my current employment. This is not required for those who are applying for a postgraduate work permit independently, like you don't have dependents. Well, in my case, since I do have my husband with me and I applied for his extension together with my postgraduate work permit application, so I had to include that to support that I was currently employed. I also included a copy of my job description. It is also to support that I worked in a skilled position, as this document outlines my job responsibilities. I also included my 1.5 months pay slip. So in my case, we were paid weekly, so that was like a total of 6 pay slips all in all that I provided. And then I also provided a copy of my passport biodata page. I also provided my passport size photo. I used the same photo I applied for my student permit like 2 years ago. And then I also provided list of activities that I have been into for the past 10 years. So that would also, this document is not also really like required, but I also included that just to emphasize what I have been into for the last 2 years I've been here in Canada. And then I also included my dependent's open work permit, my dependent's letter of employment, and then I also included my husband's bank statement. This is not also required, but I thought of including this to support that we are financially capable to support ourselves here in Canada, despite this situation that I only had a part-time position at the time of our application. And then I also included my husband's passport biodata page, my husband's passport size photo. Same thing with me. We used the same photo we used when we initially applied for his open work permit 2 years ago. And then we also submitted a copy of our marriage certificate. And then lastly, we provided the signed IMM 5713E form. This form is for family members who wish to apply online together in one MyCIC submission. So in our case, since I was the one who submitted our application and included my husband in there, so I had him sign that form. All right, so now here's the list of documents we have submitted for my husband's open work permit extension. We submitted more or less the same documentation for both of our applications. So in his case, we also included a letter of intent. Again, this is not required, but we also thought of including that there as our way to communicate with a visa officer, explain our situation and our intent to be still here together in Canada. We also again included a list of activities he was into for the past 10 years. We provided a copy of his open work permit, a copy of his letters of employment. We also provided his 1.5 months payslip, a copy of his bank statement, his passport size photo, his passport biodata page, a copy of my study permit, a copy of my completion letter, my transcript of records, my employment letter, and then my job description to support that I was again in a skilled position, because that was required. That was actually one of the requirements for you to extend your open work permit holder, that you should be employed in a skilled position. So just to make sure that we have that covered, we included those. And then we also included my 1.5 months payslip, our marriage certificate, and then again the signed IMM 5712E form. As I have shared earlier, we were able to find very helpful sources of information that can also help you or guide you through the application process that we found online, and we will include those links in the description box below for your reference. Alright, so that brings us to the end of our topic for today's video. I hope we have given you some useful insights on what you need to do and prepare for your postgraduate work permit application in the future. We will also try to come up with a separate content specific to how to fill out forms for your applications. And before we finally conclude this video, let me quickly share with you a quote which says, "All of faith is about stepping into something that isn't." So that's the unknown. And as we walk into the unknown, He guarantees He will go with us, guide us, and protect us. So pursuing this journey here in Canada entails many uncertainties, but constantly remember that you are not alone on this journey. If God brings you to it, He will bring you through it. So God does not allow us to encounter suffering and difficulty unless He has a plan for us to walk through it and triumph. So thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for future uploads or stories about our adventures here in Canada. Have a good day.